In the grand kingdom of Aloran, where opulence and tradition coexisted in a delicate balance, a storm of whispers swirled through the corridors of the royal palace. Rumors of a challenge, an unprecedented test of loyalty, spread like wildfire among the nobles and commoners alike. At the center of this storm was a young woman, destined to play a pivotal role in the unfolding drama. The daughter of one of the wealthiest families in Aloran, she had always lived a life of luxury and privilege. Her parents, ambitious and influential, had secured a marriage alliance with the royal family, promising their beloved daughter to a prince. Yet the path to this union was fraught with an unexpected trial that would test her resolve and redefine her future. In the heart of Aloran, within the sprawling mansion of her parents, the young woman led a life many could only dream of. Her days were filled with lavish parties, elegant gowns, and the finest education money could buy. Her name was whispered with admiration at court, and her beauty and grace were unmatched. One warm afternoon, she was summoned to her father's study. The heavy oak doors creaked open, revealing the imposing figure of her father behind a massive mahogany desk. He looked up, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "Come in, my dear," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "We have important matters to discuss." As she took a seat, her father cleared his throat, his gaze unwavering. "The time has come for you to fulfill your destiny. You are to marry Prince Alistair, as you know, but there is a condition imposed by the royal family, a test to prove your loyalty and dedication." Her heart pounded in her chest as she listened. "What kind of test, father?" she asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety brewing inside her. Her father sighed, his eyes softening. "You must either shave your head in front of thousands of people, demonstrating your unwavering loyalty to the royal family, or you must live in the servants' quarters in the castle and serve there for the rest of your life." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. She felt a chill run down her spine as she grappled with the gravity of the situation. Shaving her head would be a public spectacle, a humiliation that would strip away her dignity and beauty. Yet living as a servant would be a lifelong sentence of hardship and anonymity. The day arrived with a sense of foreboding. The grand plaza outside the royal palace was filled with a sea of people, all eagerly awaiting the spectacle. Her parents stood beside her, their faces a mix of pride and apprehension. As she stepped onto the raised platform, her heart raced. The sun shone brightly, casting a golden glow on the polished stone. The crowd fell silent, all eyes on her. Prince Alistair stood nearby, his expression unreadable. With a deep breath, she addressed the crowd. "I stand before you today not as a mere daughter of wealthy parents, but as someone willing to prove her loyalty to the royal family." Her voice was strong, but her hands trembled slightly. A hush fell over the crowd as she knelt before the royal barber, who approached with a gleaming razor. The first lock of her hair fell to the ground, and she felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Each stroke of the razor brought her closer to her fate, and with every passing moment she felt a profound transformation taking place within her. As the barber continued his work, Prince Alistair approached her. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is quite a sacrifice you're making," he said, his tone laced with genuine curiosity. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with determination. "It's not just a sacrifice, Prince Alistair," she replied. "It's a testament to my commitment and strength." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I admire your courage. Not many would have chosen this path." After the last strand of hair fell, she stood up, feeling the cool breeze on her bare scalp. The crowd erupted in applause, their admiration evident. She had passed the test, and in doing so had gained a newfound respect and a deeper sense of self. But the joy was not complete. One of the royal heralds, an elderly man with a stern expression, stepped forward holding a parchment. He cleared his throat, and the crowd fell silent once more. By decree of His Majesty the King. The herald began, his voice echoing through the plaza. The young lady must shave her head every year on this day, as a symbol of her ongoing loyalty to the royal family. The girl's eyes widened in shock. She had believed this to be a one-time ordeal, not an annual ritual. She glanced at her parents, who looked equally stunned. The herald continued. If she refuses to obey these orders, she will face strict consequences, including but not limited to confinement in the castle dungeons and the revocation of her marriage to Prince Alistair. The weight of his words settled heavily on her shoulders. The thought of spending every year facing the same public humiliation was daunting. She felt a sense of betrayal, having not been told the full extent of the royal demands. Prince Alistair, noticing her distress, stepped closer. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She turned to him, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You knew about this, didn't you, Prince Alistair?" she asked, searching his eyes for any hint of deception. He sighed, his expression somber. "I knew there were additional requirements, but I was not aware of the annual shaving." "How could you not know?" she said, her voice rising. "This affects my entire life." "I understand your frustration," he replied gently. "But we can find a way to make this more bearable. I promise to stand by you through this." Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe him, but the reality of her situation was overwhelming. She turned back to the herald. "Is there no other way?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The herald shook his head. "The decree is clear. Your loyalty must be demonstrated every year." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "And if I refuse?" "The consequences will be severe," the herald repeated. "You will lose your position, your marriage, and your freedom." The crowd watched in silence, waiting for a response. She felt 1,000 eyes on her, each one judging her next move. She looked at Prince Alistair, her eyes filled with determination. "If this is the price I must pay to uphold my family's honor and my commitment to the royal family, then I will do it." The prince took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You are stronger than you know," he said softly. "We will get through this together." As the days turned into weeks, the reality of her new life began to sink in. The once joyous and carefree days of her youth were replaced with a regimen of royal duties and the looming annual ritual. After a week, she could no longer bear the anxiety and dread. Determined to change her fate, she decided to negotiate with the governor. She requested a private audience, hoping to appeal to his sense of fairness and compassion. The governor's office was imposing, with high ceilings and walls lined with portraits of past rulers. She stood before the governor, a stern man with a reputation for being unyielding. "Your Excellency, I wish to discuss the decree concerning my annual head shaving," she began, her voice steady but pleading. "Is there any way to amend this requirement? It is a significant burden, and I believe my loyalty can be demonstrated in other ways. Thank you." The governor looked at her, his expression unreadable. "The decree is the king's will," he said flatly. "It is not open to negotiation. But surely there must be some flexibility," she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. I am willing to undertake other acts of loyalty, ones that do not involve such public humiliation. The governor's eyes narrowed. You question the king's decree? He asked, his tone icy. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. I only seek a compromise that allows me to serve the royal family without this annual ordeal. The governor's gaze hardened. There will be no compromise. If you continue to press this issue, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? She asked, fear evident in her voice. If you persist in this line of questioning, the governor said coldly, you will be imprisoned, and your head will be shaved every day. This matter is not up for discussion. Consider this your final warning. Her heart sank. She realized that any further attempt to negotiate would only lead to more suffering. She bowed her head in resignation. I understand, Your Excellency. Thank you for your time. Later that evening, she sat in her chambers, her heart heavy with despair. Prince Alistair entered, his concern evident. What happened? He asked, sitting beside her. She looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. I tried to negotiate with the governor. They refused and threatened to imprison me and shave my head every day if I spoke about it again. Prince Alistair's face hardened. Instead of the comfort she had hoped for, his response was cold and dismissive. You will get used to shaving, he said flatly. Forget the subject. She stared at him in disbelief, her tears spilling over. How can you say that, Alistair? She asked, her voice shaking. This is my life we're talking about. Every year, I have to endure this humiliation. You can't just expect me to accept it. Prince Alistair's expression remained unchanged. There are worse fates, he replied. As long as you fulfill the decree, you will remain by my side and enjoy the privileges that come with it. Complaining won't change anything. She looked at him, her voice filled with pain and frustration. I thought you understood, Alistair. I thought you cared about what this is doing to me. Prince Alistair sighed, his tone exasperated. I do care, but you have to understand the realities of our situation. The decree is the king's will, and it must be obeyed. She shook her head, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. You don't understand at all. Every day I wake up dreading the anniversary, dreading the moment I have to stand before the crowd and lose a part of myself. You're overreacting, he said dismissively. It's just hair. It will grow back. You're overreacting. It's not just about the hair, she cried, her voice breaking. It's about my dignity, my sense of self. Every time I go through this, a piece of me is taken away. Prince Alistair's eyes softened slightly, but his words remained harsh. You need to find a way to cope with it. This is your reality now? Days turned into weeks, and she found herself increasingly isolated. Her once strong bond with Prince Alistair felt strained, and the burden of the annual ritual weighed heavily on her. She spent her days performing her royal duties with a forced smile, but at night, the anxiety and dread consumed her. She tried to confide in her parents, but their responses were equally unsupportive. You have to understand, this is for the good of our family, her mother said. We need to maintain our status and honor.